Hello, I'm Andrea Davis Pinkney, Vice President, Executive Editor at Scholastic, and the author of numerous books for children and young adults. Welcome. Today we celebrate the life and the incredible legacy of Bernette G. Ford, trailblazer, visionary, mentor, and friend to so many of us. Bernette, you were a believer. You always had your eye on that far horizon of what was possible. And you made us believe it too. Bernette, you saw right into the minds and hearts of the youngest children. We had witnessed what some of us call the lack of Black, the shortage of early childhood stories with characters of color. But Bernette, you wasted no time. You got right to work. Yes, Bernette G. Ford, you believed. Your message was clear. Come, little one, be, see yourself as beautiful, worthy, important, bright. Bernette, today we rejoice in the legacy seeds you planted. Now a glistening garden for children of every complexion, hue, persuasion, and color. Today we capitalize the B in Black. That's right, Cap B. Bernette, bold, beautiful, brilliant, brimming with kind-heartedness that let us know we all belonged. And so here we are, together, authors, publishers, colleagues, friends, and family. Today, we are doing what Bernette affirmed, illuminating the power of what it means to believe with a capital B. Speaking of illumination, feel free to light up the chat box with your comments, expressions of love, and tributes. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce acclaimed author Kelly Starling Lyons.
Bernette Goldson Ford was one of the first African-American executives at a major children's book publishing company. Starting as an editorial assistant in training at Random House in the early 1970s, she went on to establish a stellar career at companies such as Western and Grosset and Dunlap, where she became editor-in-chief and publisher, and at Scholastic, where she established the Cartwheel imprint and helped to lead the hugely successful Clifford the Big Red Dog and I Spy series. It was through a group called Black Creators for Children that Bernette met many future collaborators, including seasoned children's book illustrator George C. Ford Jr. They married in 1978 and welcomed their only child, daughter Olivia Goldson Ford, in 1979. In more than 4 decades together, the author, editor, and illustrator logged only 3 official published collaborations: Bright Eyes, Brown Skin, published by Just Us Books in 1990, The Hunter Who Was King and Other African Tales, published by Hyperion in 1994, and You Can Change the World, and We Rise, We Resist, We Raise Our Voices, published by Crown in 2018. Bernette never wavered in her commitment to ensuring that Black children and all young readers of color could see their experiences, histories, faces, and families reflected in the pages of high-quality books designed for their age group. In 1990, with Bernette and Cheryl Willis Hudson as co-authors, and George animating their vision with his illustrations, Just Us Books published the instant classic Bright Eyes, Brown Skin, an ode to Black babies' joy and positive self-image, featuring Bernette and George's daughter Olivia, niece Alexa, and nephews Ethan and Jordan as models for the 4 children in the book. In 2020, on the book's 30th anniversary, Bernette funded a small print run in board book format in honor of and dedicated to her infant granddaughter, Orion. Bernette joined Scholastic in 1989 to launch Cartwheel Books, the company's first imprint for early readers. She remained at Scholastic for 13 years, serving as vice president and director of special projects. In 2020, she left Scholastic to found her own book packaging and consulting firm, Color Bridge Books. Her flagship project was the 24-book Just for You series of early readers for Scholastic Teacher Resources. All the titles featured Black children and were created by authors and illustrators of color. In the mid-2000s, Bernette also became U.S. consulting editor for Boxer Books, a UK-based small press run by her close longtime friend, collaborator, and British brother, David Bennett. On June 20th, 2021, this pioneering publishing executive, author, and crusader for children's book industry equity and diversity died the way she wished to live, at home in Brooklyn, peacefully, with members of her immediate and chosen family. And now we will hear from Wade Hudson, president and co-founder of Just Us Books, and one of Bernette's dear and cherished brothers.
Bernette and George, George and Bernette. People who knew them called their names as if they were one person. Cheryl and I first met Bernette and George in the 1970s, and we bonded early on. We cannot imagine our journey in the publishing industry without them. In fact, we cannot imagine our life journey without them. Bernette was a champion of diversity in children's book publishing. Many writers and artists of color, as well as those who desire to work in the industry, got their start because of her. For a number of years, she mentored aspiring book creators at the Writers' Workshop at Chautauqua. The Just For You line of books produced and packaged by her own company, Color Bridge, brought 24 books for children that illuminate Black life and experiences to the marketplace, all written and illustrated by Black book creators. But for us, Bernette, George, and their daughter Olivia were family. They were Aunt Bernette and Uncle George to our children, Keturah and Stephen. And we were Uncle Wade and Aunt Cheryl to Olivia. We did so much together, visited each other's homes for meals and fellowship and great conversation, inspired ideas and offered support and advice we all needed to continue our work in the challenging and often hostile world of book publishing. Bernette has made her transition now. She is with the ancestors, and there is a terrible void with which we must deal. But she is still with us in spirit, and her legacy provides light for the dark places and encourages us to continue. Arthur Ashe, the great tennis player and activist, once said, "True heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It is not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever cost." Those words describe Bernette. She did so much, but always in her quiet way, without fanfare. She did not seek the limelight. Her legacy was shaped by opening doors and breaking down barriers, and by making a difference in the lives of children. And my, oh my, what an enduring legacy. Now it is my honor to introduce Olivia Golson Ford Theory, the daughter of Bernette and George, and my niece.
Greetings, and many thanks to all for being here. I grew up in this community. Children's book people were my mom's people, my dad's people, and they were my people from a young age for pretty much my entire life. I was much older when I realized that not all offices were filled with books and toys and posters of book covers, not to mention adults who seemed to enjoy being around children and hearing what they had to say. I was always surrounded by books by Black authors and illustrators like Eloise Greenfield, Floyd Cooper, John Steptoe, Valerie Flournoy, Wade and Cheryl Hudson, and many others, featuring Black kids just doing what kids do with pride. I knew even before I can remember learning that each of those titles was hard-won, and that my mom and dad probably knew the author, the illustrator, or both, and that I often did as well. Most of my travels as a kid were with my mom to book fairs and sales conferences where I was often the only or the youngest kid around, and it was like I was everyone's kid in this really fun-loving community, going to the pool with young editors or out dancing with sales reps. I know now from personal experience as a parent that it's hard to bring a small child with you to work travel. But mom did it because she wanted me close to her. And of course, I wanted to be with her too and be part of the world that she spent so much time in. And in that world, at these conferences and events and meetings where I'd be sitting in a corner reading or at the booth helping out in some small way, I'd observe how folks across the industry and from around the world would be so excited to see my mom, to revisit her warmth, her explosive laugh and expansive grin when something was really funny, the undivided attention and interest she shown on those in her presence. My mom got such great satisfaction from working with friends, creating opportunities to collaborate, even with folks she knew and loved who didn't work directly in children's books. Color Bridge Books and the flagship Just For You series were truly a family affair on so many levels, including all the new kids it brought to my mom and new siblings for me in the form of this brilliant group of emerging authors and illustrators of color that she mentored and matched with seasoned Black professionals through the project. I was one of those authors. I wrote a book for the Just For You series, but I've been edited by my mom since I could string 3 words together. Now I'm also an editor by trade. I come honestly by my red pen and am in no way self-made, though my medium is very different. I also approach editing as what I have come to see as a doula practice, all about supporting creators and bringing forth their richest work. And it's clear to me now more than ever that I get that from my mother. She was known for her excellent feedback. As the news spread of her passing, I remember a comment on social media from someone who had applied for a job with my mom and did not gotten the position, but the encouragement she shared in the rejection, the person recalled, had a greater impact than anything they'd gleaned from an actual employer. I believe that came from her earnest desire to see others succeed. My mom also adored and deeply respected kids. It came through in her writing style, which she and I talked about often, and in her spirited interactions with kids at schools and libraries, sometimes on the street, and most recently and most especially with her only grandchild, my daughter, Orion, who's now 3.5. Mom had the perfect read-aloud voice, calm and expressive and exuberant, and my daughter would ask her to read book after book after book, first in person, snuggling in grandma's lap, then on Zoom for almost a year due to COVID, then together again for the precious few weeks that we spent with my parents over Christmas 2020 after quarantining for 7 days, then back on Zoom for our Sunday visits, and even in the last few days of my mom's life, when Orion arrived and brought light into my mother's eyes, that irrepressible smile to her face, and somehow the will to read book after book after book to her little one from her mechanical bed. Orion may not understand quite what dying means, but she knows and often expresses that she misses her grandma, snuggling in her lap, reading books and hearing stories, and I tell her that I miss grandma and those things as well. Because of my mom's work and that of my dad, aunties, uncles, all of you, and many more, Orion may one day take for granted that there are an array of books featuring kids who look like her, created by grown-ups who were once kids who looked like her and could not find reflections of themselves and their lives in the books that they loved. Just as the next generation of Black authors and illustrators may have the chance to take for granted that they get to do Black work and find a home for it and a community around it. But I will never forget or tire of sharing with my daughter the ways that she has her grandma, my mom, to thank for that.
when we had this group, the Black Creators for Children, and it's pretty clear to me that Bernette, she's telling everybody, I'm going to marry this guy. They are telling me I ought to marry her. You're two peas in a pod. She has that sure-footedness, and I am already experienced. And so we are a team. Before we were even friends, people were saying this about her. I had a feeling for the way she read the manuscripts. You know, the young people were bringing the manuscripts, and I was talking about how you could illustrate it and so on. So essentially, I'm in the workshop as an outsider with a little expertise. She's one of these just out of college young people with her first job at Random House. Anyone who knows Bernette can see what she's about. They can see the genuineness. They can see the brilliance. They can see the ease with which she moves. Love is a strange thing. If I married everybody I loved, I would be in the divorce courts all the time. It's a lot more than love. Marriage, especially a marriage between two creative people, it's a lot. Love, of course. You wouldn't be working if you didn't have love for everybody, period. Love is what makes you get up in the morning. Love is what makes you go in the snow to somebody that you kind of suspect is only putting it on. My best running pal, a woman, her name was Eleanor Bowles. She said, George, if I could just concoct someone and create someone who's perfect for you, it would be Bernette. The next thing that happened was I had a partner, and then I got a family. Bernette had this passion for empowering the very youngest, having them emerge. Everything she did was like, so anyone who knows her sees that. But it's not conscious, and it's not exclusively that. You can bring her anything, and she can do it. But one thing is certain, don't grieve for me, because Bernette will never be absent from me, period. Period, full stop, end of story.
As we continue to celebrate the life and legacy of Bernette, we welcome Sonia Black, a former editor at Scholastic's Cartwheel imprint.
When I met Bernette, I'd only had a magazine background at Scholastic. I was actually the last in a line of editors for Dynamite, a magazine for teenagers. When Dynamite ended, my future at Scholastic seemed up in the air. Lucky for me, Bernette arrived at Scholastic and created the Cartwheel imprint for the very young. I'd had no experience whatsoever with novelty books, board books, picture books, early chapter books. Yet Bernette trusted me with a position on her staff. She would later share with me that the fact that I was a single parent influenced that decision. I have special memories of Bernette, not only as a boss, but as a friend. More recently, I had called Bernette with the news that I had finally become a grandparent. She was so excited for me, excited for us, because she said, now we could share stories about our granddaughters. I really wish that we could. Now we'll hear from David Bennett.
Hello, I'm David. First of all, thank you to everyone who have organised this wonderful event in honour of Bernette. And while I'm here, I want to say a very special hello on video to George and Olivia and Tara and Orion, and to all friends there. I wish I could have been there live to meet everyone and share memories, but sadly, we Brits are not allowed into the US still, and I will actually be in Scotland on the day that you have the celebration of Bernette's life. And where I'm going to be, there's no signal of any sort. Scotland does have signals, but just not where I am. Bernette and I worked with each other for about 30 years, 30 fantastic years. Absolutely loved the whole 30 years. And I think everything I want to say, I wouldn't fit into this short video. And I have expressed it to Bernette's family and also to the press, who rightly paid wonderful tribute to Bernette's extraordinary life. What I would have given in the last year to have walked into Bernette's kitchen, my American home, and given her a great big hug. This last year has been rather a cruel one, and my heart goes out to everybody who are missing Bernette the way that we are as a family, and I am as a close friend, and to anybody that's suffered in this awful pandemic. I think when we make true friends, we're not really aware when it happens. We just enjoy having those friends in our lives. But when they're gone, it's very painful. And I know the saying, I feel your pain. Well, I really do feel your pain. I can't begin to tell you how much I've enjoyed having Bernette and her family in my life and my family's life. I used to love walking the halls, as Bernette would call it, in Bologna or Frankfurt. At first, Bernette was a business client, then a close friend, and then Boxer Books US editor-in-chief. And I have to say, absolutely key in our choice of all our titles and the integrity of those titles. Everybody loves Bernette. Everybody loved Bernette, and it is as simple as that. I know she had her own ups and downs, but she carried those ups and downs, I think, very regally. She sometimes called me a crazy man, and I used to love that. And right now, if she were here, I would have one eye on her saying, how am I doing? And she'd raise a smile and her eyebrows and say, you're doing great, kiddo, even if I was rubbish. Oh, Bernette, we do miss you. Amazingly, Bernette would be a little nervous at times about presenting Boxer Books at a conference or perhaps at Bologna. I mean, rarely, but sometimes. But she was always incredible. She mesmerized publishers everywhere. They all fell in love with her. And her incredible, simple, detailed presentation, not missing a single salient point, was all presented like story time. And I just think how amazing to have such a way with people, combined with a creative spirit and such a clever business intellect. As soon as I can, I will be there in the US, and I will be in that Brooklyn kitchen, and I will feel Bernette's light and warmth and hug George and Tara and Olivia and Orion, and hopefully visit with some of you and regale some stories. For now, I'm sending a ton of love from myself, my wife, Linda, my children, Sam, Helen and William, and Bernette, we miss you and thank you for enriching all our lives. Bye-bye.
Hello, I am Phoebe Yeh. I am a co-publisher of Crown Books for Young Readers at Random House. But back in the day, I was starting out at Scholastic, and that was when my path first crossed with that of Bernette Ford. But I admit, I took things for granted. I did not know what I know now, and that is that Bernette's career and Bernette's books, what they would mean to readers of color, their caregivers, and yes, for people in publishing like myself, and to the handful of other BIPOC young people in publishing. It's only now that I recognize what Bernette's career would mean for all of us. And today I'm with you to acknowledge that she really paved the way for all the rest of us. I am not alone. There are so many other creatives who Bernette inspired, and now we will have a chance to hear from some of them, starting with a dear friend and colleague, the author Olubemisola Rude Perkovich.
I'm Olubemisola Rude Perkovich, and my first encounter with Bernette Ford's work was life-changing. As a college freshman, I worked with a literacy program where part of my job involved visiting homes in Harlem and Washington Heights, knocking on doors like, "Hi, I'm a stranger here to read to your children and talk about nutrition." The other students and I were given a large box of books, and we dug in, ready to change the world. I loved to perform and read aloud and wanted to share the joy. But as we went through the books, some were okay, some seemed like punishment, and most did not represent the vibrant Black and brown community we were there to serve. But there were two books that we almost tore apart in our eagerness to use, and one of them was Bright Eyes, Brown Skin by Cheryl Willis Hudson and Bernette Ford. The impact of that sweet lyrical story was a powerful one. Yeah, the families were cool with most of the books that I brought, but that one made children's eyes shine with the joy of recognition, the gratitude of being seen and knowing that their daily lives were valued. On the days that I didn't have it, it was okay. Kids would invite the other children in their buildings to come hear the reading girl, and they had memorized it. They would point to their own perfect noses while they said the words aloud. It did more than teach reading. It nourished, it built community, and transformed us all. Many years later, it was one of the first books that I brought for my own daughter, and I felt a new kind of gratitude and joy seeing that same power that it had in her life. Bernette Ford's works, like the Just For You series that she created, were staples in our home, were the birthday gifts that we gave, were the breathless recommendations that I made on the playground. I dreamt of one day writing for very young children, and it seemed like a long shot because I'm a long-winded writer, but it also seemed possible because of Bernette Ford. She created space for people like me, not just on the page, but behind the scenes and in the creation of the stories. And now I am doing just that because Bernette Ford made it possible. I had the opportunity to meet her a few years ago, and yeah, I did cry a little in gratitude and joy. I mentioned two books that we fought over back in those days, and one was Bright Eyes, Brown Skin. The other was Just Us Women, illustrated by award-winning author-illustrator and one of my favorite people, Pat Cummings.
Hello, I'm Pat Cummings. I had the good fortune to meet Bernette Ford when I was just starting in children's books. With my first book assignment, I'd contacted the legendary illustrator Tom Feelings out of the blue, because I knew someone who knew someone who knew him. And Tom had generously walked me through the process of putting a book together. Through Tom, I learned about the group Black Creators for Children. I'd been offered a second manuscript with an interesting story, but so full of negative stereotypes that it was impossible to accept it as it was. So it was a relief to find a group that was trying to develop criteria for what would constitute healthy, positive, realistic representations of people of color in picture books. That was where I met Bernette. She was charming, full of ideas, and so welcoming. Along with George Ford, Joyce Hanson, Brenda Wilkinson, Walter Dean Myers, and so many other writers and illustrators, the group was hammering out guidelines, and they provided the support network I think we all needed. Over the years, I came to know Bernette as both a gifted writer and a brilliant editor. And over the years, Bernette was someone who clearly put all of her strong beliefs into action. If you've ever had the honor of meeting Bernette Ford, then you know as I do what we've all lost. Her warmth, her wisdom, her humor, and the keen eye that even way back then steered so many writers and illustrators to do their very best work and to always keep their eyes on the prize. We miss you, Bernette.
We now welcome Nikki Grimes, an award-winning writer and poet. Nikki?
Hi. I came into this business in 1977, a time when there were barely any Black editors, let alone Black executives in publishing. I knew Toni Morrison, who was editing adult books at Random House, and there were a handful of assistant editors or readers I was aware of. I was also aware of at least one Black literary agent, but that was about the extent of it. It would be years before I met a Black woman in the business who was in a position to write her own ticket, and that woman was Bernette Ford. The mere fact of her existence excited me. Bernette was all about reclaiming the identity of Black people as portrayed in books specifically books for young readers. Our goals most definitely aligned, and when she approached me about writing for Cartwheel Books and later for Color Bridge Books, the only word I had for her was yes. It was never even a question. Wild Wild Hair was the first book I wrote for her, and A Day with Daddy, illustrated by Nicole Tedgell, was the last. Bernette was a joy to work with. She was kind, warm, encouraging, and soft-spoken, but she was also smart and savvy and always knew what she wanted in the books she chose to shepherd. Bernette was a gifted editor, as we all know, and a consummate professional with an eye for talent. It's no surprise to me that the books she published and sent out into the world were well received and then some. My book, Wild Wild Hair, illustrated by her equally gifted husband, George Ford, and published in 1997, sold more than 250,000 copies, proving what Bernette knew all along. Black books can sell if they are the right books and if they have the right person at the helm. Bernette, you were always the right person. You were way ahead of the curve. Next, we'll hear from author Joyce Hanson.
I met Bernette in the mid-70s when I joined Black Creators for Children, a workshop dedicated to creating literature for Black children. We were an assortment of illustrators, writers, editors, teachers, journalists, and parents. The group decided to create a children's magazine entitled Watoto, a Swahili word meaning children. We wanted to do more than just talk about criteria. We wanted to produce. Bernette was a driving force behind the creation of the magazine. With her knowledge of editing and design, she brought to life the ideas that we had been discussing. Bernette organized illustrations by George Ford, Tom Fieldings, and others, with original stories, poetry, retold folktales, and puzzles, all culturally relevant. I remember how hard Bernette worked, and this was unpaid labor. She worked hard to pull the magazine together, and she was dedicated to producing a magazine for children that represented the best work we could give them. Bernette was hands-on. The commitment and dedication she brought to creating Watoto is the same dedication and commitment she has given to her work throughout her successful career in publishing. And the thing I remember most about Bernette is how comfortable she made you feel. In those days when she was working so hard with Black Creators for Children, she always had that sweet smile and kind spirit. No matter how busy she was always ready to help. Over the years, when I would run into Bernette at a conference or some event, she was the same. That sweet smile, that kind spirit, her comforting presence. We will miss her.
What's up, y'all? This is Derek Barnes, and I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in and really express how important Mrs. Ford is and was to my career. I was working at Hallmark Cards. I got hired in 1999, and I landed my first book deal in 2004. It was with a new imprint called Just For You. I think it was a part of Mrs. Ford's Color Bridge project. And those were my very first 2 books, Stop, Drop, and Chill and The Lowdown Bad Day Blues. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. You know, I got an opportunity to meet her. We only met in person once. It was in 2004. She came to a conference in Kansas City, Missouri at a hotel, and my agent, Miss Regina Brooks, who was a mentee of Mrs. Ford. She loved her so much. She introduced me to her, and she and I sat and chopped it up by a fireplace in the hotel lobby. And she was just so cool. I mean, I remember her being really cool and really sweet, and she spoke life into me, and really talked about how I had a future in this business, and talked about my future projects. And I just remember her conversation and her smile, and just doing further research about her, how important she was, being, I think, really being the first Black editorial director in children's publishing. So if I had to make a list of the Black women in my life who have been very instrumental in me being where I am today, this video will go on for forever. And she is definitely one of them. So I salute her. Thank you so very much for not only helping to launch my career, but so many other talented Black writers, brown writers, illustrators. And hopefully we can take that torch and move it forward. And I will continue to do my part to uphold your legacy, Mrs. Ford. Love you. Peace, y'all.
Bernette Ford's legacy is secure. She has had a major impact on the publishing industry and on the lives of so many people, many of whom would love to share their reflections. Time, however, does not allow that in this particular space. Ruby Bridges is a true champion in the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality, and she is a friend of the Fords.
Hi, I'm Ruby Bridges. And first, I'd like to express my deepest sympathy to George and Olivia. I know that we are here today to celebrate Bernette's contribution to the industry, but I'm a little bit selfish. I'm here to just say thank you to George and Olivia for sharing Bernette with me. It was 25 years ago when I walked into Scholastic and met Bernette and George, and they both welcomed me with open arms. I remember those days when we all were so excited about going to the Oprah show to celebrate the story of Ruby Bridges that George illustrated so beautifully. And having Bernette there just to support me, and which she was always there, giving advice, just being a mom. And literally that's how they both made me feel. They were truly my surrogate parents. And I would always call and get Bernette on the phone just to ask advice. And she was there each and every time. That calm, soothing voice that we all will remember and cherish forever. She seemed to always make things better just by speaking with her. And even the last week that she was with us, I remember calling and getting her on the phone. She was very short-winded, but still really eager to talk and to answer any questions that I had. I mean, she was always just that calming spirit that seemed to make everything okay. Except for when I got her and George both on the phone, which happened occasionally. I would get them both on the phone, calling for one, and they both were there and, you know, giving advice. And then I would hear her say, George, no. And eventually she would give up and hang up and leave George and I to ourselves to have that father and daughter talk. I just want to say that I am going to miss her immensely. And again, I want to say to George and Olivia, I will forever be grateful for you sharing her with me. Thank you, and I love you both.
Thank you, Ruby. Hello, I'm Barbara Marcus, who worked at Scholastic for many years and now am publisher and president of Random House Children's Books. I am so honored to be able to participate in this special moment for Bernette Ford. I've been asked to read from some remarks I made when Bernette left Scholastic, which reflects my relationship with Bernette and the magic of Bernette. I'm going to put on my glasses to make sure I read it correctly. Once upon a time, not so very long ago, in most of our lifetimes, Clifford was just black and white, and of course, red. And of course, it was not 8 by 8, but a unique scholastic size. Poor Emily Elizabeth, not even her lovely blonde hair was shown. So we plunged forward and published Clifford in 4-color. Then Jean Fywell and I went to Bologna and bought novelty books from international packagers, all which I recollect failed miserably. Once Jean and I had stuck our toes in the publishing of merchandise juvenile books, we quickly realized all we did not know. Luckily, a mutual friend whispered that Bernette Ford of Grosset and Dunlap fame might come over to pioneer and build the Scholastic publishing program for the very young. She was, we did, and she created Cartwheel Books, which puts Scholastic in the world of novelty and board books and authors and illustrators and packagers for the very young. Bernette taught us a lot about relationships with the world of international publishers and packagers. So she came to Scholastic as a publisher and simultaneously became my teacher. She is the best kind of teacher. She was the best kind of teacher. One we all adore having, learned, thoughtful, caring, and capable of imparting what she knows to others. I know we have positioned Bernette as a graduate of Scholastic, but I like to say I am a graduate of the Bernette Ford School, and I am smarter and better for it. Bernette has also shown us how a marriage is truly a loving and complex relationship with her talented, wonderful, warm, complicated artist husband, George. And she has taught us the joys and wonders of being the working mother of lovely Olivia. So today, and then, adding, we celebrate Bernette as she goes on to a bigger classroom and through her books and nature teaches and taught more children and adults via the teachings of Bernette. We were lucky to have her to teach us all. Thank you, Bernette. And now it is my honor to introduce Cheryl Hudson, publisher and editorial honcho at Just Us Books.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Willis Hudson. Bernette Golson Ford was my sister friend, and when I think of her, I remember us laughing together, singing together, planning together, and working together. Not only was she a brilliant, smart, business-savvy editor, but she had multiple creative skills and a can-do, will-do, let's-do spirit. When we first met During the 1970s, there were only a handful of Black women working in children's book publishing. But somewhere between her jobs at Random House and Golden Books and mine at Macmillan, we became fast friends. She invited me to join Black Creators for Children. She sponsored me in the Nzinga Society, where together with professionals in the media, we organized and held an annual auction to benefit Black arts organizations. And it was there through our love of theater and writing and publishing that Wade and I and Bernette and George became family. We'd sit around the table sharing ideas and our dreams. And Bernette had such a welcoming spirit. I know that in our frequent meals together, she would always prepare Wade's favorite dish of red beans and rice. And it was also there that she and George became informal advisors as we were trying to brand the Afrobets Kids, and before we even published our first book. And we went on in 30 plus years together to do so many other projects together. And Bernette could sing. She and Susan Knopf invited me to join an a cappella class at the new school, and it morphed into a singing group called Viva Voce. And we had so much fun together. Bernette would sing alto, I was on soprano, Susan would sometimes sing tenor, and George was on bass. And secretly, Susan, Bernette, and I planned to be backup singers and join in with Sweet Honey and the Rock on their annual visits to New York City. And every year at Carnegie Hall, we would be right there in the audience singing along with them. Bernette had a really unique position, and she held it so well as a trailblazer in publishing. But it was her spirit, her warmth, her love, that she captured the pulse of childhood and expressed that through any projects that she worked on. When we collaborated on Bright Eyes, Brown Skin, it was her brilliance in being an author and a wordsmith that shone through and made it the book that it was. We love Bernette, and her legacy as a trailblazing professional in publishing will always be remembered. But what I cherish most is that she was my wonderful sister friend.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was beautiful. Yes, Bernette could sing. And thanks to everyone who's lighting up the chat box, seeing some beautiful tributes coming through. Now, please enjoy this video with Bernette and her beloved George Ford.
I wasn't an executive at that point in my career, you know, those early days, but I was, you know, the editorial meetings were, you know, the whole editorial department was there. And you would bring your projects that you wanted to present to, I was at Random House. That was my first job in publishing. It was a hard row, you know, to hoe. A couple of times I would bring something to the meeting and people would say, oh, well, you know, Black folks don't buy books, so that's probably not going to work for us. It was like, you know, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that going on at the same time. This was 1972. I started there, and I was there until 79. When I moved up as I moved along. I worked at Golden Books for 4 years, and then I went to Grosset and Dunlap for 6 years. I remember I was doing a photographic book with a photographer, a white photographer, about horses. And we proposed a cover. One of the models he used with the horses was a Black girl. And we brought the cover, you know, there's a cover meeting where you go and you know, editorial and sales and marketing are all going to comment. Oh, no, we can't have a Black girl on the cover. No, she's beautiful, but people won't buy the book. They'll think it's a Black book. So we had to go and do another cover. I mean, that was the kind of thing that happened all the time. And when I reached a certain point, when I got to Scholastic and I was an executive editor and a vice president, I had a lot more freedom to do the kinds of books that I wanted to do. You know, when I decided to go out on my own as a packager after after the World Trade Center fell. I mean, I was up on the Manhattan Bridge on a subway train looking at the thing, you know, on fire. And when we finally landed, when our subway car finally stopped at Canal Street and made everybody get off, that was when the towers were falling down. And the cloud came up Canal Street. I will never forget it. It was like a mushroom cloud. And I thought, I'm not going to be here in this city, away from my husband, away from my family, when, you know, the next one comes. So I made it up in my mind at that point that I would work on starting my own company and publisher. And one of my first contracts was the Just For You books, which were original paperback readers, easy readers, all illustrated and written by people of color. And the assignment was for 24 books. And that is a lot of books.
Carl Lennox is Executive Director of the Children's Book Council, a nonprofit trade association of children's book publishers in North America, and is dedicated to supporting the industry and also dedicated to promoting children's books and reading. Carl has a very special announcement to share with us.
Hi, everyone. I've been asked by this amazing tribute committee to bring some exciting news from the Children's Book Council. With the support of the three publishers where Bernette Ford worked, Scholastic, Random House, and Penguin, and most importantly, with the blessing of George Ford, with whom I had a wonderful, wonderful phone conversation with recently, I'm very happy to announce that the CBC will fund and sponsor the Bernette G. Ford Award, an annual book award to honor the legacy of the brilliant and inspiring author, editor, and publishing executive whose life and work we are celebrating today. We want this award to help further the vital work that Bernette Ford did as an advocate for increasing diverse representation in children's books by ensuring that BIPOC authors and illustrators had opportunities to write and illustrate these books, and that more editors and art directors of color were hired to create them. This annual award will recognize new preschool books to be voted on each year by teachers, librarians, and booksellers across the country. We will honor the BIPOC book creators as well as the publishing teams that bring these books to market. The need for and the goal of this annual award is twofold. First, to inspire publishers to acquire and promote more preschool books that tell meaningful and inclusive stories. We want to inspire the work of not just the next Bernette Ford, but dozens and even hundreds of Bernette Fords across all departments. And secondly, to promote these great new books on the shelves of thousands of schools, libraries, and bookstores. The CBC is humbled and honored to help carry the message and meaning of Bernette Ford's life and legacy forward to many new generations of illustrators, writers, publishing staff at all levels, and yes, many generations of children and families. Thank you, all of you, for all you do every day in our essential and joyful work together.
Carl, that was beautiful. Thank you. And, I saw a chat in the chat box that said, our hearts are singing. Absolutely. Thank you to the Children's Book Council. What a beautiful way to honor Bernette's contributions. A bibliography of books that Bernette authored is now available. For all of those who registered for today's program, the Children's Book Council will email the list out to everyone, again, who attended this event. So I hope that you'll really enjoy that. The Bernette G. Ford bibliography will also be posted online with cover images at cbcbooks.org. Also of note, this program has been recorded for future viewings. So I hope that you will enjoy that and share it. And now to conclude, I'm very pleased to bring back Olivia Ford, Bernette's daughter, and the mother of 3-year-old Orion, Bernette's granddaughter. They will be joined by family members reading Bright Eyes, Brown Skin, the award-winning modern classic by Bernette Ford and Cheryl Willis Hudson, illustrated by George Ford and published by Just Us Books. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Ethan Yarbrough. I am the nephew of Bernette Ford.
Hi, I'm Olivia Ford, and I am Bernette Ford's daughter.
Hello.
This is Orion Ford Theory. She's Bernette Ford's granddaughter.
Hello, I'm Alexa Yarbrough. I'm Bernette Ford's niece.
I'm Jordan Yarbrough. I'm Bernette Ford's nephew.
And we will be reading Bright Eyes, Brown Skin by Cheryl Willis Hudson and Bernette Ford, and illustrated by George Ford. And for those who have not yet guessed, we are the children from that book.
Bright eyes, brown skin, a heart-shaped face, a dimpled chin. Bright eyes, cheeks that glow, chubby fingers, ticklish toes.
A playful grin, a perfect nose, very special hair and clothes.
Bright eyes, ears to listen, lips to kiss you, teeth that glisten.
Bright eyes, brown skin, warm as toast.
Hello,